Adam Kramer, welcome into the game in T-Town. I hope all is well, man.
Everything's good, buddy. Good to see you, obviously, these last couple of days, and hope everything was good for you.
No doubt, man. We got about 2 or 3 weeks worth of content, and I know practice starts 2 weeks from tomorrow, and we're talking about a lot of reaction. Let me ask you, what Nick Saban, Tua, Jerry Jeudy, Dylan Moses, what was your big takeaway from Alabama Day yesterday?
Boy, there's a lot of different places to start. I think first and foremost, sizing up Tua. I thought he looked a lot. I think you're seeing a physical transformation in him. Truly, looked fitter, looked stronger, looked bigger, but looked like he's put on some mass, probably to hopefully get himself ready to take a little bit of a beating. If you can follow thematically Alabama's season last year, having him limp off in what seemed like every 15 minutes or so became hard to watch. Now, ultimately, that wasn't where you unraveled. You have to, pick that apart. But I think Tua not only looked refreshed, but has clearly been, Sabanized. And we talked about this a little bit, and I mean that's not a bad thing. I think it just in terms of his comments, there was a calm over him. It was very kind of businesslike, professional. I don't think he was letting you in as much as maybe he did as his freshman, sophomore years. There seems to just be like a very kind of surgical, tactical aura around him that I think is really, really positive. So just sizing him up, if he stays healthy, and he should hopefully be able to, he's obviously going to have just another monster year.
Let me ask you, when you look at Dylan Moses accepting that leadership role on that side of the football for a couple of minutes, I was impressed with him. Get a chance to get to know him for a couple of hours and hear some of the voices. He kind of sounds like that typical Nick Saban linebacker that we've come to expect in the 12 years here in T-Town.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, just a college career for him, because he comes in just one of the freakiest linebacker recruits I think ever, based on some of the numbers I was told for him, the things he ran as a freshman, and just some of the things he's capable of. And you sort of get absorbed in the system, especially if you're on defense. And you play that position too, it can be a little bit tougher. But I just think this was just a matter of time. The fact that he can grow, and I mean, you've seen him in spurts just be dominant and has a chance to be the best linebacker in the nation. So I'm with you. It is cool to hear him kind of mature, and another guy that I think has truly taken full advantage of the process. It's not going to surprise me at all when he comes out, and I think, nationally, people start to see a form of him that maybe some were expecting to see a couple of years ago. He's been great. I think he has a chance to develop and flourish into kind of like a generational type linebacker here.
Adam, you're going to be working on a big story in the coming days, and I don't want to tip people off to anywhere you don't want to go, but these wide receivers, man, in Tuscaloosa, I was just filling out the ballot a couple of minutes ago, and, I try to guard against my homerism here in T-Town, but when I was filling out my wide receiver ballot on the first team, second team, how do you not put these wide receivers in Tuscaloosa if you're picking, I think, 6 wide receivers? I mean, it's so easy just to go down and go Alabama, 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 Alabama.
Yeah, and that's really, the fun part of this story. And, for me, as much as I like to tell Alabama stories, this is going to be a different one because, it's been a while since we've been able to look at these wide receivers and gloat. And look, I know Clemson has 2 freakish dudes and probably more in their cupboards. But when you size up these 4 guys, what I love about it, and I'm looking forward to talking to these guys more about it, is there just seems to be, in a lot of places, this would not fly, right? If there's 4 really good players at a position, people are out of there. And yet I think there's this really cool camaraderie amongst the group. Jerry Jeudy, by the way, I know this was Tua Mania last year, is kind of blossoming into this very popular pick as the best player in college football. Forget about just, wide receiver. I think he's that far and away. He's magical. I think I mentioned it to you this week. I know I've talked to a lot of people about it who've asked me. I get Reggie Bush vibes when I look at Jeudy, and I know they play different positions, but when you watch him in the open field, it is that is must-see TV. It's must-see moment. What's really fun, though, is yes, you have him, the best wide receiver in football. You've got the fastest wide receiver in football in Ruggs. You've got a guy with the most prolific and important catch or at least one of the most important catches in college football history. And oh, by the way, Mr. Waddle came in last year and was one of the most electric players. So it's hard to know where to start. But you throw in a quarterback and really a running game that should be great despite the departures. And I don't know what you do to defend them. And I guess my biggest concern point would be the obvious one is, how are you going to call? Are you going to be able to script plays as well as you did at times last year to take advantage of it? Like, because other than that, and protection, of course, is always important, especially given how things turn. Can you protect the quarterback, and can you be creative enough to get everybody the touch that they need? Because if you can, man, it's going to be an absurd group.
Hey, Adam, I don't know if it's kind of hard sometimes. It's almost impossible to catch every single one of the players in every single one of the rooms because they're all spread out. You're trying to, get as much as you can. Tua was in a room, and this might be a wonderful quote for your article. One of the things that he said was how unselfish these guys are. And he called it brotherhood route. That's what he talked about. He said, they know they're not getting the football, but what they're willing to do to sacrifice for the other guy getting the ball, he said, these are a bunch of unselfish wide receivers. I've never played him with anything like this. He called it the brotherhood routes that they run.
The other thing about it, too, man, and you're exactly right, and I remember meeting with Tua last year, and he was just glowing about wide receivers and really trying to take a lot of his production away from his individual abilities, of course, which is very Tua-like. But the other thing about it, too, and I think you're seeing more of this now when it comes to the draft, if you're Henry Ruggs, if you're Smith, you don't have to catch 60 balls to impress an NFL team. There's kind of an acceptance that, hey, you're playing alongside Jerry Jeudy. You've got all these talents. Look at a guy like Irv Smith who took advantage of those opportunities. Look at Josh Jacobs, a guy that didn't necessarily have to carry the ball 60 times. It's almost like the running backification that Bama has exchanged to the wide receiver group. So these guys, yes, of course, they probably want to catch 70, 80 balls. And look, if each individual guy was at a different program, I think you've got 3-4 of these guys that are the number one wide receiver at just about every school in the country, with the exception of just a handful. I mean, that's how crazy this group is. So if you're Ruggs and you catch, 50, 60 balls this year, 45, 60 balls, you score double-digit touchdowns again, and you're really good, and then you go to the combine and you run sub 4.3, which you will, you're going to make millions and millions of dollars. You're not going to have a ton of tread. You'll have a ton of tread. You won't have a ton of wear and tear. It's a really amazing position to be in. Oh, by the way, you play for Alabama, and you have a generational QB throwing for you. So it's different, and we're not used to this with wide receivers because it is such a position, the classic diva model. Like, it just doesn't apply here. These guys are amazing talents that just feed off each other. It's honestly refreshing because it's very, very different from what we've seen historically.
Well, there was 5 different receivers last year. This is one thing that I think Tua is so great. He doesn't lock on to a wide receiver. It's so easy, especially if you've got a Jerry Jeudy, a Blitnikoff, a winner. When you talk about the catches that he was able to 1,300 yards, it would be easy for just him to lock into him. But he caught 68 balls, but there was 5 wide receivers that caught 40 or more receptions, including Irv Smith, the tight end.
Yeah, and then think about Josh Jacobs, which would get in that mix as well. Damian Harris would catch some balls. It actually what makes them so tough. And these guys are only averaging 7-8 yards a catch, right? This is 12, 13, 14, 17 yards per play. So all of this is downfield. So it's just it's a nightmare. If you're a team, and they're all 4-4 guys probably. I mean, there's not, it's just like, if you're going to construct a way to stop this, your hope is to do what Georgia did, which is just to disrupt enough where you can, don't allow these plays to develop. And that was like one of the few breakdown moments we saw. And then obviously the Clemson game got sideways. So I really think an emphasis has to be offensive line just to hold up, because that is the key, is let these guys work, because there's absolutely no defense out there that if Tua has time, they're not going to find success with.
Adam, let me ask you a question. When you look at this Alabama football team, and I came back yesterday afternoon and told the audience, I said, I've heard enough. I've heard enough. I understand the motivation. I get it. I think it's time to go ahead and book the tickets to New Orleans. I think this team will be there. Now, if they'll be hoisting up a trophy, the Clemson Tigers probably going to be standing in the way of this Alabama football team. But I've heard enough. I think this team will be fueled by what happened in January. It still bothers them because they're still throwing out what happened, what went wrong, and how to fix it, and all the different things. This team is probably a national championship team. I'll be shocked if they don't win it all.
I think they've, I'll be shocked certainly if they're not in the playoffs. Then you see what happens with Clemson and everything else. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that the sentiment I have is, you could see anger, right? When you're watching Nick Saban at the podium, don't listen to what he says necessarily. Watch his hands. I love watching that because when he talks about being done playing golf and wanting to get back to it, how do you think the last 7 months have been for him? You think he's been a pleasant human? Do you think he's been happy since that game? And I do think, however, as gut-wrenching and just absolutely still unimaginable as that loss was, that is currency for him. The only benefit to come from that, of course, is that he's basically been able to lean on these guys since then, and will lean on them until they win this thing or be in a position to win this thing because of that outcome. And he kind of talked about that being sort of the thing that's going to fuel them. It's a lot easier to get people to buy in when you lose like that than when you win a game. So, yes, a horrible way to lose, but now, given where we are, if you're him, that is the motivation. The vibe I got from them, too, is angry. Like, if you're Duke, like, you don't feel particularly good about these things. That was the other takeaways. You could just feel, Tua very open about it, that feeling of losing. That was a Cinderella ride for him, right? Like, from everything other than the injury and not winning the Heisman, which we could argue about all day. That's a Cinderella season to come crashing down to know what that feels like. Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I think they are in a position to be – the offense is in a position to be better, which is insane when you think about how absolutely disruptive they were, like, out of the gate for much of the year.
Well, and speaking of when you talk about these wide receivers and all this different mentality, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle – named to the Blitnikoff Award watch list. So the wide receivers getting some recognition this afternoon. I don't know if there's ever been a.
Did that ever happen? I was just going to say.
I don't know.
I doubt it. Right?
It'd be hard to say, and I'm a Blitnikoff voter. I don't know. 50 candidates, 3 of them are from Alabama.
That's just, but totally appropriate.
Sure.
And that's the thing. Like, the way that this offense runs, all 3 of them could be league eye this year. I think Judy's the best one. Doesn't mean he's going to have the best numbers. That's scary. So what is your approach here? And then, look, you saw Najee Harris, who had the highest, yards per carry average of the group. That guy's going to be hungrier than ever now that he's getting his time. So, truthfully, the methodology of this team, what we saw so much of last year, shouldn't be any different. It really shouldn't. Sometimes those championship games was Clemson that much better than Alabama. That night they were. But you know how the sport works, man. Games go sideways. Things happen. I don't think they're worried about that. Clemson's going to be awesome again. They got a couple of insane wide receivers and an insane running back, and Trevor Lawrence is absurd. They're going to be great again. So, but if you're Bama, you got to unleash some of this aggravation on somebody. That's going to be Duke. And then you go from there. I can't wait to see it, man. I do think there's just a different vibe around this team that we're used to seeing. Obviously, after a loss like that, you would expect there to be.
BleacherReport.com. Adam Kramer, National College Football Analyst. He's working on a long piece about the University of Alabama and all these different wide receivers and Tua Tagovailoa and where this program is headed in 2019. Adam, do you need a food recommendation for tonight? Do you need me to step out there?
Yeah, of course. Man, I'm always looking for food. I'm down here so much that even if I can't get there, I'll be down here, right? So what do you got for me? Anything sounds good.
Well, listen, the traditional Dreamland, everybody's got to stop there. But we've got a place here that's one of our sponsors that if you like Southern cuisine, they cook everything like all the scratch stuff. It's called Southern Ale House. You got to go over and try it.
Okay.
Everybody that I've ever sent over there, like callers, I'll say, hey, go over and try this. They'll literally call back in and say, hey, that was an awesome steak. That was an awesome smoked pork chop. That was an awesome bacon-wrapped meatloaf. So if you love Southern cuisine, no offense, I know you live in Big Ten country. Like, I don't ever I don't ever hear people say, "Hey, man, have you tried that Illinois food?"
No, I'm not offended. I mean, we've got our I do love it down here. And look,
Pizza's good up there.
Pizza's fine. It's fine. But look, you can't do barbecue and no, it's great. And I've done Dreamland. I've done like the staples. I have not done that. So that I'm going to tuck away and hopefully take care of. Because yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. It's certainly one of the perks of coming down here as much as I do.
And if you get some availability, I might be able to put you on my tab. So just let me know.
Ooh, you walk in there, right? Like you the mayor in there?
No. I mean, I just I eat there so much. I mean, listen, yeah, I've told you this before. Yeah, you don't ever trust a skinny guy to give you a food recommendation. Like, a skinny guy walks up to you, you got to go after the guy that's a little bit hefty, man. I can put you on some food. I promise you. I can take care of it.
I'm in. No, it sounds delicious. What you mentioned sounds good. So I'm in.
All right.
That sounds great.
Adam Kramer, have an awesome trip to Tuscaloosa and a safe trip back to home. We'll talk to you very, very soon. Thank you for making this part of your afternoon, man.
Of course, buddy. Talk to you soon. Good seeing you. We'll catch up here.